Growing up, my social skill was pretty much non-existent. I could barely even introduce myself without turning red. And so I've done my fair share of homework to learn how to have better conversations and in that process become a better people's person and to be more charismatic. These are some lessons and tips that I've collected along that journey that I have found so incredibly helpful, which I've compiled into this video so that hopefully you can find it useful as well. Welcome back to the It Girl Playbook. Today we will be exploring the art of conversation. Tip number 1 is the 70-30 rule. Having a conversation, it can be broken down simply into two parts, talking and listening. You can't have an engaged conversation where you are completely silent or the other way around, when you're just talking non-stop. And so we can agree that there needs to be a balance, which is why the 70-30 rule is relevant. Listen 70% and talk 30%. Obviously, we're not keeping a mental stopwatch, but the point is to listen more and speak less. No, not to encourage you to feel small and to be quiet. It's more so creating space for others to feel heard, valued, and interesting. Some of the most effective leaders are effective for this exact reason. Nelson Mandela learned from his father, who was a tribal chief, to always be the last one to speak in any meeting. By letting everyone else speak first, he gathers more perspectives and it encourages more honest discussions and it makes others feel valued. And when he finally does speak, his words carried more weight because they are more informed and therefore more relevant. This is the power of listening, but many of us focus so much on the talking that we forget that listening is also a skill that holds so much value. I remember a TED Talk I was watching on how to become a better listener. And you know what's so funny? The secret to being a better listener is to, get this, to listen. But the problem is a lot of us listen to respond instead of listening to understand. Maybe this is something that you can relate to as well, where it feels like someone is just waiting for us to finish our thought so that they can speak next. And so it felt like they weren't even listening. It just felt like they were waiting their turn to speak. And so to become a better responder, you first need to become a better listener. The more you truly listen, the more people will open up and the deeper your insights will be, giving more impact to your response and the words that you speak. The next tip is to be genuinely interested in others. This is the first lesson from the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. As someone who always thought that in order to be charismatic, you had to have the funniest joke, the most interesting stories, or the most impressive career, this lesson came as a huge relief and it's also far more effective. The author said that you can make more friends in 2 weeks by being interested in others than in 2 months trying to get people interested in you. It works because people naturally love to feel seen and heard. And when you turn that spotlight on someone else, asking about their passions, their experiences, their achievements, you make them feel valued, respected, and special. Oprah Winfrey is one of the best interviewers for this exact reason. She's never the one dominating the conversation. She's never really the one in the spotlight. She's just genuinely curious about the guests that she's interviewing. Her secret isn't asking the right questions. It's truly listening to the answers and following up thoughtfully. She's genuinely interested in her guests and what they have to say. And that engagement makes her guests open up, which is why we get that depth of conversation that we don't really see anywhere else. You don't have to force interest. It's more so intentionally finding aspects that genuinely interest you. And when you do, you'll find your conversations flow more easily and people will walk away thinking you're charming without you ever having to quote unquote perform. You become interesting simply because you are interested. Tip number 3 is the you're the expert frame. I have one uncle who loves to give advice on everything and anything when I ask for it and even when I don't. I've come to learn that people love feeling like the authority, and when you value their expertise, you make them feel important. One of the most underrated ways to have an engaging conversation is to make the other person feel like they are the expert. This isn't about pretending that you know less than you do, or maybe it does, strategically. It's more so about valuing someone's knowledge and giving them the space to share it. The problem is asking for help, asking for advice or guidance, it sometimes gets a bad rep, and we avoid it because we don't want to seem weak or incompetent. Even myself, when I'm in a room full of really, really smart people, I used to go out of my way to avoid asking questions and avoid asking for help because I didn't want to appear to be the only one that seemed like I wasn't understanding. I didn't want to risk sounding stupid. But the reality is, when you ask for someone's opinion, you show respect for their experience, it gives them a sense of importance, and that can create an immediate connection because people naturally warm up to those who value their perspective. And so this tip is mainly just a reminder that asking for help, asking for advice, and for guidance, it's not a weakness, and it can actually help you have better conversations. Just remember to follow up with thoughtful questions and reactions to show respect and gratitude. Don't just nod and brush it off with a simple thanks, because this will reinforce that their perspective matters, and people will remember how valued they feel in your presence, and that's the essence of an engaging conversation. The next tip is to have stories. Stories go a long way because it's engaging, but the problem comes when we don't have stories. I thought so. I felt like I didn't live an interesting life, and therefore I felt like I never had interesting stories to share. But the reality is, there's always something happening to us or around us that we can make into a story. We just don't put the effort into remembering it and valuing it as a story. I remember there was this guy that I went on a date with, and he was telling me about how one of his New Year resolutions was to become a funnier person. And I was genuinely so fascinated. How can you do that? How does one even measure that? And so he goes on to tell me how he practices being funnier. He takes note of all the stories that happen to him and around him and keeps them in his phone's notes app for him to retell. And based off of the reaction that he gets, he'll know whether to keep that story or to scrap it. And I found that to be so genius because the idea is, over time, you build a collection of stories quite literally in your pocket that you like and serve the purpose you want of either entertaining, humoring, relating, or just charming. If you take a look at successful comedians who literally tell stories for a living, you'll notice that they are able to entertain so effectively, speak so funny and charmingly because they've mastered this as well. They actively observe life and turn it into content, and they go through that same process of curating content and keeping only the ones that get the best reactions. Your life is full of stories, and by leveraging the same practice and curating them, you have the ability to create a tool that you can carry to connect with anyone any way you want. We've all listened to talks that felt kind of like lectures or conversations that felt very surface level or stale, but stories have the power to hold attention because it no longer sounds like someone's trying to sell you something or give you a boring lecture. This is the value that stories hold, and you have the ability to master this if you choose to put in that effort. The next lesson is to mirror emotions, not just words. One of the reasons why we love talking to our best friends is because they share our excitement and our anger or our disappointment when you tell them something. And this is so important because it goes so much further than just agreeing or nodding along to what someone says. It adds depth to our responses and therefore builds on the quality of your conversations. There is that saying that people may not remember what you say, but they will always remember how you make them feel. And this is exactly why mirroring emotions works so well, because it creates that sense of chemistry where the person not only feels heard, they also feel understood and their perspective feels validated. Obviously, if you 100% disagree with what they said or did, don't get all happy and excited and validate them. But if someone is sharing a win with you, feel excited with them. If they're venting with you, share their frustration. We do this so naturally with our friends and our family already, but when you extend it into conversations with people that you may not know as well also, it can instantly elevate the quality of your interactions. If we revisit the Oprah example and we take a look at her interactions with her guests, we can see how effectively she does this also. When guests open up about themselves, she'll feel excited with them, shocked with them. Sometimes she'll even cry with them. That kind of emotional synchronization holds so much value because when your reaction supports their perspective, it relaxes them because they don't feel the need to go into defense mode because you're not contradicting them. It cues your mind to see you as an ally, making your presence feel warmer, the conversation more engaging, and overall just more memorable. And the last tip is to be playful. Humor creates instant connection. A little bit of teasing, some witty observations, or sharing funny stories has the ability to brighten the mood and even create chemistry. Humor, it releases dopamine, making people associate you with happiness, with fun, and with pleasure. And so not only are you having a great conversation, you're also being remembered in a positive light. Humor can also be such an incredible tool in taking the tension out of something or taking the heat out of something that was meant to use against you, like a jab disguised as a joke or a comment or a rumor that was meant to embarrass you. We've explored this with Hailey Bieber in her Vogue interview, where she used humor and satire to address what people were saying about her being obsessed, a stalker, and a nepo baby. She's made plenty of attempts to dismiss these claims, and they added no real value in clearing her reputation. But the moment she leaned into satire, people began making clips of her and began portraying her and seeing her in a new light. Maybe you can relate to this as well, but a lot of times when I'm talking to someone new, I feel this pressure to be polite, and the thought of being playful, it just doesn't cross my mind because I'm telling myself that we aren't that close yet, and as a result, the interactions feel too polite, almost customer servicey, and the point of being charismatic is to try to come off as friendly, and the only way to lighten up that mood is to be playful. Being polite makes a conversation safe, but being playful can make them memorable. This isn't to say that you have to be the funniest person. It's more so to remind you to have fun in the process and in the conversations that you have. It's to help you realize that you can relax and that it can even work in your favor. It can immediately make interactions feel more natural, and it's one of the simplest ways to project friendliness, warmth, and charisma. Great conversations are about connection, not talking the most or being the funniest. And by listening more, by showing genuine interest, spotlighting others' expertise, sharing stories, mirroring emotions, and being playful, you have the ability to make people feel seen and valued, and as a result, you're seen as charming and pleasurable to talk to and to be around. I don't want to hear anyone saying that you can't have good conversations because you don't have anything interesting to say. You're not boring, you just lack conversation skills, and the beauty about skills is that they can be practiced and be improved on. And with these lessons and tips that honestly I'm still practicing also, I hope that it can help you in becoming a better conversationalist and as a result become more charismatic. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out the It Girl newsletter for episode recaps to join the conversation and to help decide on what to explore next. I hope to see you in our next episode, and in the meantime, as always, stay hot. Bye!